teach boys the difference between right and wrong. That's a key message of the Bombay High Court, which was hearing a public interest litigation on the alleged sexual assault of 2 minor kindergarten children in a school at Badlapur in Thane. Now, on this program, we're trying to look at the importance of changing the mindsets of boys from a young age in a society where sexism and a lack of gender respect are entrenched. Let's face it, it's something that affects so many parts of our society. In fact, it's there right across the board. Joining us to look at this, Mimamsa Singh Tanwar. She's a clinical psychologist. Dr. Ranjana Kumari, director of of CSR and chairperson of the Women Power Connect. And Karuna Nandi, senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Thank you very much for being with us. Karuna, let me come to you first. What the Bombay High Court on Tuesday said is that there must be a way of teaching boys the difference between right and wrong, and as well as sensitizing them about respecting women at a young age. How significant is this in a society, in our society, where sexism is so deeply entrenched?
This is actually extremely significant because I think it's in recognition of the fact that it's at the prevention, at the point that a child is not sexually abused. And that's the only point at which real justice comes, because anything else is not real justice. Anything else is a violation of a child's bodily integrity, a child's most basic fundamental rights, right? Now, when we have, say, the Vishakha guidelines, which say that sexual harassment for grown women, quite rightly, must be prevented by private actors in the workplace due to the failure of the state to even come up with a law in this regard, right? In this regard, I think the fact that the state, and I'm not just talking about the BJP government here, I'm talking about governments across the board and all governments up to now, up to today, have failed colossally to address the root causes of sexual violence against children and sexual violence against women.
Yeah.
Colossally failed.
Mimamsa,
it's not that they don't know what to do.
Sure.
The thing is that even in Maharashtra itself, in Bombay, there are various projects. There's an NGO called Sneha, I think there's the ICRW. There are a number of pilots that have been done working with boys and men. Sneha, I think, had worked with boys in slums, but this is true of boys in big houses, boys across the board, right? In doing workshops, doing very in-depth gender workshops with them, and the results were that their attitudes changed to what they expected women and girls to do, to the way in which they approached women and girls. So this stuff works. And when we are talking, why are we talking about self-defense for victims, teaching girls self-defense? I mean, fine, all that has its limited place. But teaching men not to assault, that is the crux of the situation. And today the High Court has spoken to that, and it is long overdue.
Mimamsa, in dealing with young adults who are violent, who come in with the deep sense of sexism, an attitude of chauvinism, where there is no concept of gender parity, it's ultimately linked to the background of children. And, it's difficult to have a one fix solution for every child. Is that perhaps what you encounter, that children from different socioeconomic backgrounds react to instances of violence or how they treat women differently? Or is there violence against women pervasive across all socioeconomic backgrounds?
So I think it depends. I mean, there is no differentiation in terms of what socioeconomic background you come from, and would you show less violence or would you show more violence in that sense. But I think what we need to understand over here is that when we talk about gender, is such a conditioned aspect of our mindset and our attitude towards any gender for that matter, and it begins as early as a child is able to understand something like this as early as 4 years. And in our society, we end up seeing it at different levels. We see it at home, we see it in schools, We also see it through media. We see that in society, and constantly we are bombarded with a lot of this attitude, mindset, modeling in a gendered way that's happening every now and then. So if we look at the solutions, what are the solutions? One is something that we did when it comes to mental health. We introduced a curriculum in schools, not like a subject, but something that you need to talk about on a day-to-day basis, something which is not just a tick in the box. And the same way, we need to also bring in what is gender sensitivity. How do we bring in empathy aspect? Because when it comes to gender, again, given the aspect of it's such a normalized part of this particular gender role, conformity needs to happen, and what we end up practicing in our day-to-day lives that lacks respect sometimes, that also lacks dignity, that lacks consent, that lacks so many boundaries to it. So we need to begin early, and we need to start early. So gender sensitivity, where we are able to bring in the aspect of empathy towards individuals, and how do we continue to build that over the years, is something which is very important. Second, of course, it is about homes. What do we practice at homes is something which is, again, very important over here. Parents need to model better. They need to talk about the right and wrongs better. We hear and we are constantly, and children are picking up a lot of information from media, different forms. Violence is imitated in different ways. And somewhere the desensitization that happens to this violence time and again to different forms of gender over here, again, we need to somewhere address that, where can we bring in the aspect of violence is not okay. It should not be shared. It should not be viewed. And parents need to jump in over there, where they are able to take in these moments as teaching moments for young children, that, what are we learning from this?
Absolutely.
This is not right. And bring in the aspect of critical thinking, where we can deconstruct a lot of this.
Ranjana Kumari, we are talking about sexism. One of the most sexist aspects of this entire case is how the police dealt with this case. And I'm just going to read out a quote from the High Court. The mandate of the law is not followed by the Badlapur police. They attempted to record the victim girl's statements at the police station. There is complete non-compliance with the mandate. Asking the victim and her parents to come to the police station for a statement recording is completely insensitive and against the law. So in as much as we talk about ensuring that boys learn the value of respecting people of a different gender, the police have to learn basic laws.
Absolutely, Vishnu. Actually, let me first go back to the comment by the court, because that the basis of their understanding is that, this is again educational awareness. They are emphasizing that. And this because we do need a cultural shift. We need a cultural shift from really growing rape culture and growing, all forms of violence against women, to a little respect for dignity of women, also from understanding what gender equality means. From the very, very childhood, if they are inculcated these kind of feelings, then they will get out of that entitlement that the family gives to the men and boys. They are entitled to behave badly and get away with that. So certainly there is a message for the families, for the schools which socialize men and boys into different. And I think Karuna was giving a good example. We also tried to do something in Delhi's government schools, when they had written all kinds of nasty things about and sexually comments about girls in the toilets of the school, in the classrooms. When after the sensitization, you'll be shocked that they went and covered it with newspapers, what they had themselves written about the girls. So certainly it makes a change, but there is a limitation to that, because mostly what we need at the moment to control the situation is to look at what you talked about, the police. The action from the police side, the police is being totally insensitive in spite of so many sensitization programs. Even now, to register FIR for a rape victim has become such a humongous task. Family has to move pillar and post. They write FIR after 1 week of family running to the police station. Totally unacceptable. These are not the kind of officials, police we need in the country if we want to control growing violence against women. Every day there are cases reported of rape from all over the country, from so many parts of the country, and still police is not waking up to that. They in fact they don't believe women with the. This is my personal experience. When we have walked into the police station with a victim, police will not believe the story of the woman. Now, this is something, they start with the doubt. out. They start victim blaming.
Yep.
And if that mindset remains, then whatever education you may give, it's not going to help. So while we do need a cultural shift from rape culture to culture of respect and for dignity of women, we do need that, and that can start very young when men and boys are trained, and also when the girls are trained to what is right, what is wrong, where to stop. And for men and women both, there is something called consent.
No, absolutely.
Everybody has to be
And
taught
Ranjana,
what
ma'am,
consent
just hold on to that
means.
thought. I just wanted to go back to Karuna. Karuna, we talk about this at a broad level. We've been talking about it now for years and years after Nirbhaya. And there are so many horrible cases of attacks and violence and gender stereotypes, which are just part of everything. So let's talk about what can be done in very specific terms. Are we talking about courses in schools? Are we talking about conversations in schools? How does one implement something which can translate into results from the earliest ages onwards?
Honestly, I think that this has to be, of course, an all of society, all of government approach. There's no question of that. But very concretely, what can be done? I think at the initial instance, pilots should be done. Now, what does this mean? It means that you have representative samples in each state where you look at what were the attitudes before and after the intervention, what are the attitudes after. So therefore, you have a pilot program, not just in schools, but also for kids and young adults outside school. You have public education programs. For example, the public education programs on smoking and behavioral change programs on smoking have been incredibly effective. Those very simple, very crude almost ads that you see before the movie starts of lungs have worked, amongst other things, amongst taxation, amongst those photographs on cigarette packs, etc., to reduce smoking. In the same way, public education programs to limit violence against women and violence against girls and boys, all children, is something that we have to take in a scientific way, have pilot programs, look at what works in schools, out of schools, mass media, etc., and then scale up what works.
Okay, hold on for 1 second, Karuna. I'm running short on time. Mimamsa, 2 steps which you feel need to be implemented right away.
One, like I said, that in schools, of course, we need to do it. We need to start early. We need to keep doing it. 13 years are crucial time, and we can change a lot.
Doing what specifically?
At that point in time.
Conversations or courses or classes where students are graded. Otherwise, it becomes vague.
Yes, so I'm not talking about grading system over here. I'm not talking about a subject matter over here. I'm talking about conversations that need to really happen on a day-to-day basis. When we even talk to students or you talk to teachers, they recognize, and when you talk to young people, they see that sometimes there are gendered attitudes towards each other that they feel emotionally so overwhelmed about, and they want to question it. They want to change it. If you talk to young people and you give them the voice, they want to bring that change. So it's about
so that's step one.
Giving them
one more suggestion, Mimamsa, before I go across to Rajna.
I think we need to use different platforms, whether it's media in the form of movies, whether it's media in the form of messages, whether it's social media, films, entertainment, different aspects we need to work, because in society, when we talk about at different levels, different things work for people. So
got it, Mimamsa. Dr. Ranjana Kumari, 2 steps that you need to see to change attitude.
I think I'll only talk about one step, Vishnu. Okay. And that is that we have a large, setup of educating the minds of children. This is the school system. We still do not have a proper, even a chapter in the course, in the classes where they are teaching gender equality. And also, I think not just at the level of students that we need to introduce these subjects, but also at the level of teachers. We retrain our teachers, because we are not talking about only fancy urban schools where teachers are still understanding, talking about and they have gone through some training of gender sensitization. But what about villages? What about our rest of our country? Unless these teachers who are day and night discriminating between boys and girls, who are all the time abusing the girls and think that girls are available in the class, why not be train them completely? Sure. And that's the only way we can reach out to the large masses of young minds, and we'll be able to change the kind of...
Okay, so 4 big takeaways over here. pilot samples, and then after intervention to actually see if attitudes change in areas, in geographical areas. Importance of getting into schools, focus on spreading a message through different platforms, possibly chapters in courses, certainly conversations in school, and perhaps teacher training and retraining. Those are the takeaways that I have from this conversation. I'd like you all very much for being, thank you all very much for being with us.